Welcome everyone to the first edition of the Shell Black Whiteboard. I'm Shell Black, president of ShellBlack.com and Salesforce MVP. And on this first edition, I wanted to put some context around what the series is about. So to do that, I want to hit kind of three things. I want to tell you a little bit of story about how this came about. I'm going to cover kind of the goal of what we're out to accomplish with this series. And then lastly, the topics, just so you get an idea of if this is a series I want to tune into, what kind of information we're going to be covering. So with that, I'll go straight into the story. We're going to go way back to 2005, 2006. I was working for another Salesforce partner, doing projects, consulting with clients, and I had an opportunity to teach the 5-day admin class for Salesforce. Once a month, for a week, I'd fly out to different cities and I would teach the Salesforce class for Salesforce. At the time, Salesforce was booming. They just couldn't ramp instructors fast enough, so they were relying on the partner community to help that demand. And that was probably one of the best things I ever did in terms of my Salesforce career. And the reason being is that class forced me to get really good at areas of the Salesforce platform that I may not have had an opportunity to work with a client, whether it be web delete or complex security or assignment rules. It really made me study and get competent in a lot of areas of Salesforce. And the other thing that I found is I really enjoyed teaching. I also like weaving in some of the stories from my consulting days with my students to help get a topic across. I really enjoyed the light bulb going off and seeing it click. So that's part of how this came about, but I'll fast forward a little bit in time. So I've been working with Salesforce for about 9 years. Done about 100 Salesforce projects, so end-to-end different projects with different clients of all sorts of industries. And I found myself explaining the platform and explaining what Salesforce does to my clients. And that kind of helped get me into this teaching mode. And then fast forward to probably about 3 years ago, I started ShellBlack.com, went out on my own, and I created a blog. And the blog was a great vehicle to get all this stuff, all this information that was in my head and out to the greater community. And it covers best practices, tips and tricks. There's probably 30 or 40 blog posts on just how to set up Salesforce, the basics, how-to articles. And that was a great vehicle for me to get this information out and share. There's now, I think, over 100 blog posts out there, so I encourage you to look at the blog out there. And then lastly, I came across a website, and I was Googling something. I couldn't even tell you what I was Googling, but I came across a website, and I'll give them a shout out. It's SEO Moz, and they have a series called Whiteboard Friday. And what they did is they used a whiteboard to explain a topic that they knew about to their greater audience. And for me, I just thought that was it. That's a great combination of the classroom experience I had teaching Salesforce, as well as the blog, and the ability to get that information and distribute it over the internet. That's a great medium. So I knew that was something that I wanted to do. It's been something as a kind of a personal goal that I've had for the last 2 years. And just now, we've really gotten to the point as a company where we can produce this. We're in a studio here in Dallas filming these today. So I'm just really proud that we're finally be able to get this into a reality. It's been a real kind of a pet project of mine. All right, so that's the story. So what are we out to accomplish? What's the goal of this series? So really, it's about Salesforce basics. We're not going to go into hardcore technical aspects of the platform, but I want to make sure people set it up well. And dealing with all these clients, again, about 100 some odd companies I've worked with using Salesforce, I found that there are a ton of misconceptions and confusion about how the platform really works. And so they do things kind of weird, kind of odd. And I'm going to tell you 4 real quick stories to kind of illustrate that. The first one, I was working with a client out in La Jolla in California, and we had did some troubleshooting on workflow rules for them, and we started looking at their org and how it was set up. And during the conversation, I realized that they were only using leads. They weren't using accounts, contacts, or opportunities. They were doing their entire sales process from a single tab in Salesforce. That could cause some problems downstream. And I asked him, why are you just using leads? And he goes, well, we never got around to it. We got some traction on leads, and we just started working on it, and we just never finished it. And so we were running everything entirely off the leads object, which is obviously could have some problems downstream. So second quick story, I was working with another client that had been using Salesforce a long time. Back since 2003, they had been using Salesforce. And one thing that they were doing that I found particularly odd was they were tracking revenue in activities, specifically events. And so I asked them, why are you putting dollars in events? And it kind of made sense, and to them it made a lot of sense. They were a consulting type company. They would meet with clients, and those meetings resulted in revenue for them. That's okay, but there's a kind of a gotcha downstream on that is they then want to start using campaigns, and campaigns assumes that you're using the Salesforce data model right, and it's looking for revenue and opportunities, and there's no good way to associate dollars and events to campaigns. So kind of a gotcha that they experienced downstream. Had another client in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They engaged us to basically re-implement Salesforce. They had self-implemented and wanted to do some more marketing, and they wanted to bring on an inside sales team. And as we started looking at the configuration, we noticed something kind of glaringly obvious. They had two accounts. They had one account called hospitals, and they had one account called insurance. And we knew they had more contacts than that, and literally each account had probably 2,000 or 3,000 contacts below that. And so we asked them, why did you do that? He go, well, we sell to two industries, two verticals. We service kind of the front side with hospitals, but we also service the back side with insurance. And instead of making multiple accounts for multiple hospitals and nesting those physicians and nurses and folks under individual accounts for the different hospitals, they just threw everything in one bucket. Same thing with insurance agencies. So instead of having one for Allianz or State Farm and nesting the people that work at those different companies, they just made a general bucket called insurance, threw all the contacts in that. There's some things that could pose a problem downstream with that. And one last illustration is, I'll call it back to quotes. Company had reached out to us. We were doing some tune-up optimization, and we got to their opportunities and products, but it wasn't opportunities and products, it was custom objects. And they engaged another client, another partner, and they had built out essentially what quoting does in Salesforce, but made it custom. They'd spent $15,000 or $20,000 recreating a function that already existed in Salesforce. Yikes. So we got to talking. We basically moved them back to the standard quote module for various reasons, but kind of a learning there that we could probably take away there. So again, the goal, what we're out to accomplish, Salesforce basics, address some of these confusion, misconceptions, maybe demystify the platform, really talk about how the platform was really intended to be used to make sure that you can grow with that. A lot of times, folks to understand how the platform works, they go barreling into a section of the configuration, not realizing that they may get themselves into a corner that might have some downstream implications with maybe reporting. Maybe if they were trying to get an AppExchange product, it may not work because they kind of went off-roading with their configuration and didn't use some best practices. So really, we want to make sure that you understand what should you be considering when you're working with Salesforce, when you're setting those things up, making sure that you're giving yourself plenty of flexibility for growth, making sure you're avoiding the gotchas in growth in terms of AppExchange. And even when custom code makes sense, I'm a big advocate of exhausting declarative native functionality first, but there is absolutely good reason to use custom code. A lot of times that's the silver bullet that makes Salesforce really hum for your users. So all that quick roundabout conversation is really to accomplish one thing. Make sure that you're setting up Salesforce right so you can grow, that's easy on your users. Okay. Last big thing I want to talk about before we wrap this segment up is I want to talk about what type of topics you can expect us to be covering on this series. So let me run through these. Don't hold me to them. This is a work in progress. We're definitely going to be covering the core data model of Salesforce. When I mean core data model, I'm talking about the standard objects outside of Salesforce, leads, accounts, contacts, opportunities. And then we're going to go into some other areas of Salesforce that are very popular that I think most of you would want to learn more about. Marketing functions, potentially security, usability. Usability, and what I mean by that is how to make Salesforce easier to use for your users to help drive adoption. We might take some different spins on the topics. We might do a top 5 or a top 10 to help explain a concept. Don't be surprised if this takes off, we bring in some guest speakers that are an authority in an area, maybe on a coding side, because I'm not a coder, I'll tell you that right now. And then also, maybe we can share some experiences and best practices about how to be a good consultant, whether that's an internal consultant as an admin within your company, or maybe you're considering consulting as a career in Salesforce. We'll talk about maybe some ways you can do that and share some of the learnings that I've had over the years. So that is really what we're out to accomplish. I appreciate you joining us for our first episode, our kickoff episode of Shell Black Whiteboard. If you have comments, we would love to hear them. So you can reach out and find me just a couple of different ways. I'm on Twitter at Shell_Black. And if you just want to email us, you can email us at whiteboard@shellblack.com. Come straight to my inbox. Would love to hear your feedback. I appreciate you hanging in there, and see you in a future episode.